Welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. Here's our host, my husband, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, and stewardship coach, Jason Davis.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? What is going on? Welcome to the Jericho Force podcast. My name is Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify, and I'm excited to be your host. And welcome to another exciting episode. I'm telling you, folks, the guest that we have today, this is a very, very important conversation. If this is your first time listening to the Jericho Force podcast, we talk about how we integrate faith into the work that we do and how we live out our faith in the marketplace. I interview business owners, CEOs, people in entertainment, and they talk about what God is doing in their life and in their business as a tangible example. This isn't just hearsay. These are people that are doing it today, now, unashamed of the gospel and what they do in the marketplace. Our very special guest tonight is a powerful woman of God. But before I bring her on, let me introduce her to you. Jennifer Black is the owner and CEO of First 24 Bereavement Concierge Services and Grace Grief Recovery and Coach for Everyone. After enduring the loss of several family members over a short span of time and experiencing being taken advantage while grieving, Jennifer began to notice the needs of grieving people, not only to extend having support and guidance while planning the funeral, but well beyond. With this newfound knowledge, Jennifer saw that grief isn't an isolated event, rather several moments that people need assistance, advocacy, education, professionalism, comfort, peace, empathy, and security. The Berlin, New Jersey native opened First 24 Bereavement Concierge Services in May 2015 with the goal to be full-on support for clients beginning as soon as the first 24 hours of their loved one's passing. Jennifer's services are made available to clients nationwide and include assistance with planning funerals, assisting families with other afterlife responsibilities post-funeral, and a specialty in teaching women how to live life after a loss. Jennifer currently holds a Bachelor of Science degree, is a ICF certified grief coach, is a nationally licensed life insurance agent, and is an accomplished author. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you tonight on the Jericho Force podcast, Miss Jennifer Black. Jennifer, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Jason. I'm so excited to be on here. This is such a privilege, such an honor, and I'm just really excited to be on this platform.
Absolutely. Well, Jennifer, I share the excitement, I can tell you. And you know, Jennifer, we'll get into this a little bit later. With what your business does, this is such an important conversation that we're having tonight because, you know, a lot of people, when they hear words like grief and funerals and death, we like to run the other way. But Jennifer, as I already know that you know, it is necessary. It's necessary to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's one of those things where people, I don't know, they kind of shy away from it, but know they need it. And that's what I want to change. I want to change how people look at preparation. I want to change how they look at death, essentially, because it's not a spooky thing. It's more of a responsibility. So, yeah.
Well, and Jennifer, if I might interject, I mean, Scripture flat out lets us know, hey, our home is not on earth. Right. We're not from here. The Apostle Paul said it best: to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So I think that's kind of the beginning place to go to look at transitioning. But like you said, while we might read that in Scripture, we still have those emotions, those thoughts, and that negative connotation with death.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we just get too comfortable. Like, as to your point, as Scripture says, to your point, to be absent from here, what you just said, that's Scripture, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we get comfortable in this earthly realm. Like, we get comfortable in the cares of the world. We get comfortable in everything with this life has to alter. That's why we have to stay rooted and grounded in the Word, so we remember that this is only temporary, right? We're absent from the Lord, according to Scripture, right? So we need to be comfortable in the uncomfortability, right, with our family and friends, knowing that we're not going to be here for forever. So since we know that, right, why not prepare for us going, transitioning to where we're going to transition, right, to being with the Father and making sure our family is in a good financial position, once we're no longer here.
Amen to that, folks. We hadn't even got started, and Jennifer's already going in. I love it. So Jennifer, as we're reading through your bio, you're a very accomplished person, and God has allowed you to do a lot. At the same time, Jennifer, we know you just didn't roll out of bed and do everything that you did. So take us on the journey of your professional experience. How did you get to where you are today?
So, as from what Jason read from my bio, everyone, I graduated from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I was majored in computer science. I minored in business, right? So I had a bachelor's of science. Once I graduated, I got into the auto industry. I did that. I did general liability. I did bodily injury, which is like slip and falls, things of that nature. So I did that for several years. Upon doing that, in about 2011, death hit my family really, really hard. I have a big family. My mom has 7 siblings. My father has 11, and we're tight knit, especially on my father's side. We're tight knit, and so basically, a lot of my family members were passing away unexpectedly. One of my uncles passed away in North Carolina unexpectedly. One of my aunt's husbands, he passed away, and I'm like, what is going on? This was just so crazy to us, because it wasn't that people didn't pass away before, but none in like the immediate, and it was kind of like a domino effect. And so I think it was once my second uncle passed away, I said, okay, God, how are people supposed to handle these affairs, right? Because there's so much to do after death, and get it right? Be able to do that and grieve and get things right at that. Because my one uncle, he was out of state, so we had to get fly his body back, right? I'm on the phone with medical examiners. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so I'm just trying to be there for my family, because I'm that type of person. Like, I'm really I've always been like a helper and wanting to serve, and my family looks to me to help and do different things. And so that's when God said, you're going to be the relief for these families. You're going to make sure no family has to go through what your family went through. And I'm like, what? Are you sure? And so basically, in a nutshell, this business came from death, right? From my own experience with death. I lost my niece in 2018. Years later, she's 4 years old in her sleep. And that's how my, Here's the Hope, we'll talk about that later, the devotional came to that's how it happened, basically. So that's how it was birthed, because God knew that there were people who were hurting, who needed relief in some kind of way, in the way of a devotional. But, I can't sit here and say, I went to school for this, or I went to school for that. It was basically experiencing life, right, and the calling that God had on my life that I didn't know specifically, right, because even during my college years, Jason, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do, right? So I was in computer science. I'm not a big fan of math, and that's all it was, right? I had like calculus 100. I've had to take all the calculuses in the world. So, but even after I graduated, I'm like, Lord, what is it? And so, once that happened, that's when he's like, you have to do this. So I am called to grieving families. That is my assignment. That is who I advocate for. And so, that's how First 24 Bereavement Concierge Services came about. It's called First 24 because we are there within the first 24 hours of your loved one's passing, upon you reaching out to us. So that's how it came about, and here we are.
My God, Jennifer, there are two big things that stuck out to me while you were talking. Number one, you talked about how you serve. You've always had a serving spirit. And then secondly, out of death, the Lord gives you this call to action to help and serve people in a way that you never imagined. And I feel like for all the listeners out there, you kingdompreneurs, kingdom business owners, or if you work in corporate, like, pay attention to what Jennifer is saying. Even out of the negative, God makes a way. I think about Romans 8:28. He works out everything together for the good for those who are called, who love him and are called according to his purpose. So I just see that in your story, Jennifer. I really do.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, part of me, sometimes I do say, like, oh, maybe, there are some people that have, businesses where they're in, corporate America, and they're like, I want to change this and I want to change that, right? For me, it was experiencing death. Now, it made me sad, right? It made me devastated, but that's what occurred, and that's what had to happen in order for this business to be birthed. I mean, everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different, but to your point, Jason, it was that pain, right? Because I've often heard, and I totally agree with, like, when you see a problem, right? That's the best way to birth a business, right? When you see a problem and it bothers you so much, because I didn't know until I was in it. And I'm like, there's no way. Like, how could the funeral home, how dare they? We were at our lowest state and they're taking advantage. You get so sick and tired and you're like, I don't want anybody to experience this, right? So that, coupled with, of course, God telling you and confirming that this is what he has for you. I mean, listen, it's not even a job for me. It's a passion for me. It's my calling, it's my assignment, but I love it, and I'm grateful.
Amen to that, Jennifer. As as we continue throughout this process, Jennifer, I don't know a business owner out there who believes in the Lord where their faith didn't play a role. And you were kind of starting to get into this, but what was your faith turning point in all of this? Like, when did there was the business part, there's personal, what's going on with family, but what was that keystone moment for you and your personal relationship with Christ?
So like when I knew that, after he told me and I knew that this was what I'm supposed to be doing, or?
Yeah, so.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just and the turning point in your faith, whether it was him guiding you or, just that realization of, you know what, I can't continue going through life on my own, and God, I need you, especially with losing.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was probably a little bit after I actually launched it, right? Because I remember being on the phone with my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm scared to hit, and this is when I did the business, right, the business page on social media, on Facebook. And I'm like, I can't push the button. If I push it, like, that means it's real. Like, that means I have to do it, right? If I pushed it, and, got great responses. But it was probably months after that. That's when I really started to feel the weight of other people's grief. And I'm like, what is going on, right? And I consider myself a strong person, but grief has a way of bringing you to your knees. It really does, whether it's yours, whether you're feeling someone else's. I would say especially when you're feeling someone else's. I mean, these will be people I don't even know. I will wake up in the middle of the night just crying. I'm like, okay, God, what is going on? I cannot do this without you. And I knew that I couldn't initially, but, I think a lot of times as business owners, especially if you're very motivated, determined, you're very strong-willed, you feel like you can handle things, right, on your own. And you try to handle things on your own. And I'm like, and I knew this was way too heavy for me. I'm like, there is no way. I tried to go back to sleep, couldn't. I tried to, go on social media, distract I just couldn't. It was so heavy on me. Crying profusely, and I'm like, okay, God, I see what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I have to stay in continual prayer and stay at his feet, especially with this business. In any type of business, you need to do that, right? Because God is is our business. Essentially, he's given us this, right? And the main reason for all of us Christian entrepreneurs, right, it is to bring people to Christ in our extraordinary, right, different, unique type of ways, right? It's to give a service, but ultimately we want people to see Jesus. We want people to see Christ, see his glory, right? And so I knew that I could not handle it a few months later after me launching it, because I'm like, oh, this is great, because, we get excited. We get really excited to launch it, right? But when the real work comes, that's when it's like, okay, wait, it's not so sunshiny. It's not roses. It's not, all those great things that launches, right, bring. It's not these, like, fireworks. And so I knew at that point, a few months later, that I have to stay in continual prayer with God. This is not something where it's just like clerical work. Like, this is warfare. This is like, I've got to stay in my prayer closet, because the enemy's going to attack me constantly, knowing that I'm trying to service other people who are dealing with this grief, who are dealing with all kinds of spirits and things like that may try to jump out on me while I'm doing a coaching session, while I'm helping the family at any time, given time. So I knew, to answer your question again, I knew a few months later that there's no way I can just treat this like this is just like some little lemonade station, and I can just, get my lemons, my sugar, and I'm good. I have to stay at God's feet and stay in his word. So
I love that, Jennifer, and I love the metaphor too. Just like, hey, you just can't, add water, add sugar, add lemons, and here we go. That's not how it works.
Right.
We got to stay on our knees.
Yep.
And prayer. Jennifer, as we continue this discussion, when you work with your clients, talk to us professionally. You talk about being there within the first 24 hours. Walk us through how you work with families at the time of death.
Sure. And I'll give you the families that just need me for everything, because of course I have different services. Some families don't need as much as others. So you contact us first 24 hours. We know that death, or if you didn't know, fun fact, not so fun, that death is not convenient. So anyone can pass away at 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. I had one client, I'll walk you through him. He called me probably actually somebody else who knows me referred me, and she called me probably around 10 p.m. to tell me that her sister passed. Her husband needed help, so they lived probably about an hour away at the time, so I could just drive there. So her husband contacted me. He said, can you please meet me at the funeral home tomorrow morning, which is rare. Like, usually what I do is go to the family, see what you need, then we do it. But I'm going to just take you to the more extreme. So I meet him at the funeral home. I'll meet with you at the funeral home. I'll be the liaison. I'm not going to take over. I just kind of want to be there, because there are things they will say to you that you do not understand. There's language they will use. You are grieving. That's the number one thing. You are grieving, so you're not thinking clearly, right? You're saying yes when you should say no, and vice versa. So I'm there to kind of help you go through the process and talk about the arrangements, things like that. After that, we will, after that meeting with the funeral home, then we'll stay in constant communication, and I will be the liaison between the funeral home and you, because there's so much back and forth. There's so much back and forth, and sometimes you just don't want to deal with this. So I'm there just to kind of talk to them so you can grieve. If I need to go to you, then I will. After that, we get all the arrangements together, and then I am there for the funeral. And I am pretty much just your advocate. I'm right there. I'm your assistant, right? I'm assisting you and the family. I'm the liaison between you and the funeral home, because, again, there's people there. I'm the liaison between you and the family, everybody, right? Because so many people want to talk to you. The funeral home is asking questions, the venue. I'm doing all that. I'm there for the repast if you have one, the burial, cremation, whatever that is, right? And then after that, I help you with thank you cards if you choose to do that. I'm also there to help you go through your loved one's things, because I tell people, get rest. What should I do right after the funeral? Get some rest, because you're just exhausted emotionally and physically. So I tell you to get some rest for a few days. And if you want to go through your loved ones' things, we could take them off of certain accounts, right? whether it's the mortgage, the phone. Some people choose to leave their loved one's phone off for a few days just so they can let people know that that person has passed and things of that nature, take them off bank accounts. We're also there for moral support months after there's one client, we buried his wife, the one I was talking about. We buried her it'll be a year in October. And so, I just keep in contact with him. It was Mother's Day, sent him a text, his son's graduation's coming up. I'm going to go to that. So we stay in contact with you because your new normal starts after that funeral. Nobody's bringing over sandwiches and toilet paper and paper towels. They're going back to their lives, right, after the funeral, right? But you have to live this new normal without them. So we want to be a continued support for you. So that's kind of like a walkthrough of our services, of what we do in regards to the after.
Yeah, Jennifer, I appreciate you sharing that because I want people to hear the uniqueness of your service. You talked about being a liaison between the family and the funeral home. Can you just talk about what are some of the things that you've witnessed in the market when people don't have someone like yourself to support them?
Oh, man, the repercussions of whether, people not being prepared, or let's just say they don't have me, right? Because even this is how I know it's a God-given business, because I remember when God gave me this, I'm like, well, wait a minute, nobody's doing this, right? And to me, it wasn't like nobody's doing this, that's what's up. It was like I had nothing to gauge it against, right? I'm not a funeral home, what do I gauge it against? It was very hard for me to even find competitors, but I sent out surveys and I would do it. So I would have done it if I knew about it, right? So I've seen, people just very, confused, like if they don't have guidance, right? And here's the other thing, Jason, there have been times where I will talk to a family member. They're like, oh my gosh, I get this all the time. Your business is so great. I'm going to tell my mom, I'm going to tell my aunt, we're going to use you. Our uncle just died, right? A couple days later. Yeah. So the family said they want to, because here's the problem. There's too many chiefs, right? There's too many chiefs. And so that brings chaos and confusion because nobody knows what we're going to do, right? People are fighting because death brings the good, bad, and the ugly, right? It resurrects people from everywhere. It's like amazing, right? It's extraordinary. And so there's so much confusion, right? I've seen fights at the funeral, before the funeral, right before they walk down the processional, right before they walk down, right? I've seen people just not speak for years and come to the funeral and then not speak again. I've seen, no money, right? It gets really bitter and ugly. It can, let me say that, it can when you don't have direction. And that's with anything, because I tell people all the time, even if you don't use us, because I don't apply pressure, right? Even if you don't use us, I have a guide to help you, right? Get that. Or I tell people to get a home team, which consists about, maybe 2 to 5 people where they can kind of do everything. It doesn't negate the fact that they're not grieving, but they can take control so you can grieve. So they're telling family members, no, come over between 2 and 4. That's when she's having family members. Or, at the funeral, we're not doing this. Just having some type of order so you're not getting ran over, so you're not like mentally exhausted, so there's not fights and chaos and confusion. That's the best way to say it. That's what I've seen when people don't have this kind of service or, order in, the arrangements.
That's good, Jennifer. Mitigating chaos and confusion, as if there's not already enough in this world. Certainly in the passing away of loved ones, we see sometimes there's a propensity for even more. So folks, if you're listening to Jennifer, like she said, whether you use her or not, and I believe that you should, by the way, just the importance of what's needed and taking the time, like you mentioned, getting rest and just not having any confusion or chaos. That's huge. Jennifer, 2 things that people don't like to talk about when it comes to death. And that is life insurance, and then we'll touch on wills as well. But talk to us about life insurance, why it's so important, and just what you've observed when people have it or not.
Well, that is what I tell people to do. So one of the things when I tell people in preparation for death to get, it is life insurance. That's one of the first things I tell people to get. Because let's think about it. Your job, it's probably like $3 at the most, maybe $6. Some people it's like 80 cents. If it's with your job, get it. Why not? You know, I tell people, though, to get it outside of your job because that's one of the first things they take if you're no longer with that job. So get it with, you know, your employer and get it outside of your employer as well because, God forbid, something happened, you know, you get fired, you don't have that anymore. So that's one of the first things I tell people to get because it's something. Now, I don't want to get into. I am licensed, but I don't want to get into term and whole life. I prefer term. That's just me. I would just leave it right there. And Dave Ramsey said the same thing. Okay, he's a faith-filled man. Okay, and Susie Orman. But you know, I'll get something. I would rather you have whole life than to have nothing, right? Because it's important that you have something, especially you know if you have children, you have blended families, you have a business. You need to get life insurance. Now, a will also get a will as well. And let me tell you this. Here's the misconception when people hear, especially will, that you have to have a lot of money. That is such a misconception, right? It's just basically telling your family what you want and who you want to have what, right? It's just basically, okay, yeah, I want her to have this, I want her to have that. And you don't have to have, all these like assets and real estate. And, you could just be like, I want her to have my diamond pendant. You could just write every single thing. I tell people there's nothing is too detailed. Even with your well wishes, nothing is too, I want lilies. I know what kind of flowers my mother wants, right? I know that my husband wants to be buried in an Eagles jersey. He doesn't want to have his funeral in the church. I know specific details about my loved one. So you should also give that to your loved one. So because here's the thing. Here's one of the saddest things I've seen with death, like people being their celebration of life or however you want to, their homegoing, however you want to name it, right, not reflect who that person was. I've been to several funerals. I'm like, where am I at? This was not this person. And that's really sad because it's going off of what that person, whoever that person is, that family member, basically whoever's paying, I'm going to just be honest because I'm just straightforward, what they want, right? They're interjecting what they want on that person's life. So you want to make sure that you are remembered how you were, right? If you didn't like blue, and I'm just using something really simple. If you didn't like blue before, why would I see you in a blue suit? I would just be like, this is crazy. So, you just want to make sure you're remembered in the way that you were. And I think that you need to have that conversation with your family because if you don't, it's going to lead them to guess what you want, and that's what brings fights. Well, no, Aunt May wanted this. No, she likes pink. No, she actually likes yellow. And it's petty and it's unnecessary and it's just taking up too much time and energy. So, with the will, it's just telling people, your family, what you want, who you want to have what, even if you don't get a will, I do think you should get one, right? Even if you don't do that, just write an email. Write an email out to your family saying who you want to do what. No, it's not officially official, right? But at least it's something to go off of. I can't tell you how many times I've seen families kind of just guessing. Like, where did she go to school? I'm not really sure. Where did mommy go to high school? I'm telling you, it's serious. I even had to ask my dad. I'm like, now wait a minute. There's a few things where'd you go to elementary school, right? I'm even thinking about those things. So you just want to make sure you have life insurance and a will. And I know that scares people, right? That's why I kind of trying to baby step it and saying, just make sure you have life. And even if you're like, you know what, I have life insurance, I have a will, I am on it, Jennifer, right? Cool. But you need to monitor that thing quarterly. If COVID taught us nothing else, we already know tomorrow's not promised, right? Today's not promised. But COVID, I think that really put a reality check on a lot of people because of how people passing away by the second. And so I think people really, got a reality check in regards to that, as I mentioned. And so they started planning, started talking about things like that. So, get a will, get life insurance, put your last wishes, your well wishes out there because you just don't know.
You're right about that. You just don't know. And it was a reality check. These last 2 years have been, it's the infamous word we've heard for the last 24 months, Jennifer, unprecedented, right? That got burned into our vocabulary.
Absolutely.
So Jennifer, people can get life insurance through someone like yourself, and I thank you for taking just the simplified, like, hey, I don't want to get into it, just get term. When you're talking with people, though, how do you determine how much life insurance a person or family needs? What are just some soup to nuts tidbits you tell people on that?
Well, we go by, their age, of course. How big is your family, right? What is the income? Because you want to make sure, and here's the other thing, you want to make sure that if, let's say that you're a mom of 4, and you have a husband and he passes away, you don't want to have to go to work on Monday, right? I mean, I'm just being real. You don't want to have to do that. So, I've had clients that have been able, God, thank you, Lord, have been able to take off for 2-3 years because they were in a good financial position, and their husband, both they and their husband, got enough life insurance, right, for them to be able to do that. So whatever your income is, some people do 6 times, some people do, 3 times, some people do 3 times their income, some people do 6, some people do 10. So, I've seen, $1 million. People have $1 million for their life insurance because they just don't want to have to go back. They want to pay off that house. They want to send their kids to college. They don't want to have to be confined, right, by, sorry for your loss, but you got to be back on Wednesday because you don't have no more PTO. It's horrible. I know some people that only, their 9-to-5 jobs only give them 3 days for a spouse, for a mother. I'm like, this is insane, right? And so, you want to make sure that you have enough of that life insurance, right, which is dependent upon how much you make, right, your income, if you're working at all, how many children you have, the lifestyle you want to live for your family. Because I say that they should live the same lifestyle or better. I'm going to go with better. Because, they get older, there's more expenses, they want to go to college, or even if they don't, there's more things that they want to do, and now you're a single parent. So, those factors come into place when you are deciding how much you should have, or if you're going to get multiple policies, or if you want to increase. I have a benefit rider where mine increases 10 or 15,000 every year until I say I don't want it anymore, right, with a minimal increase. But, I'm just doing that because I don't know, So, and I want my daughter and my husband to be able to live a great lifestyle when I'm no longer here. Not that they don't now, but I want them to live a better lifestyle than we are now. I don't want him to have to worry about debt. I don't want her to have to worry about, college or whatever she wants to do. I don't want that to be a limitation for my family.
That's good. That's good, Jennifer. It's like, folks, I told you this was a very, very important discussion, and life insurance is right in the middle of it. Jennifer, like you talked about with wills, any pointers there on where someone might get a will? I know that kind of gets in the legal side and finding counsel or like a service who does it, but do you have any recommendations or some things people can look into if they'd like to get a will?
Sure. So if you have, depending upon the state you're in, you can, if you have a lot of assets, I recommend that you go through an attorney, right? If you need an attorney, you can contact me. I do have contacts in different states, not every state, but a few states. So if you need recommendation, let me know. Even if I don't have someone in that state, I'll find it because that's just what I do. I'm a concierge, so I find it. But if not, you can go something as simple as LegalZoom. LegalZoom will, I did that for my mother. I did that for my mom. We did that last year where she wanted a power of attorney, right? A financial power of attorney, a health power of attorney, which basically, and let me just tell you, so the financial one is just, if something, okay, so let me say this. A power of attorney is used when, if you, for your finances or for your health to make decisions, right? To make decisions if, you're incapacitated in some kind of way and you need somebody to make the decisions on your behalf, or you need somebody to pay for your bills on your behalf, make health decisions for you, something like that. Also, they had a will, and I think it was about $130, right, for the health directive, the power of attorney, like just for you to name, and the actual will. So it was like 3 or 4 things you could get for about $130. It wasn't any more than $150 on LegalZoom.com. I'm not an advocate for them at all, but I'm just telling you, I just like to be real with people. And I just, you know, a lot of people think like you have to have an attorney, you have to have money to do this. You don't. It's something as simple as going on LegalZoom.com and getting that. Those are official documents. You get them signed, you get them notarized, you make copies, give it to the people, whoever's on there, right? They do ask some pressing and deep, I would say, questions, right? So do you want to be resuscitated, right? Do you, you know, DNR, do you know, I know like when I did that for my mother, she said absolutely not. She said also that she wants her, one of her girlfriends to be, to make decisions with my sister. And I said, cool, whatever you want to do. I'm just filling in the information. So just the thing is sitting down and doing it, right? Because we're so busy, right? Oh, I don't have time. You need to make time for that because you're going to need it. There was a incident, a guy that I went to school with, his mother was in a coma. She did not have a health POA. But I believe she was married, but it was an estranged marriage. So I don't know where her husband was, but her son could not make any decisions. It was so heartbreaking, and the husband was nowhere to be found. But unfortunately, the son was trying to get her to sign something, but she was infected. She was in a coma, so she couldn't do it. And he could not make decisions. So I say all that to say that LegalZoom, you could do that. Or you can get an attorney. If you need more information, you can contact me. We can kind of go from there to make sure that you are taken care of.
People, if you've not noticed, these are the things that a concierge can do. Jennifer, you're very resourceful, and especially in times of death, people need to understand their options. They need resources. So Jennifer Black is definitely somebody you want to stay in touch with. We'll get to contact info in a little bit. But Jennifer, besides just being the founder of First 24, I know that you're also a grief coach and an author. And so I feel like grief is, in many ways, Jennifer, it's understood but also misunderstood. So talk to us about what you do, the work you do as a grief coach, and then we'll transition to the wonderful book that you wrote.
Okay, yeah. So after God gave me First 24, I realized with, you know, death happening continuing to happen with my own family, I realized that people still need help. They need support, right? Because of the new normal. They are hurting, right? It's not just like lights, camera, action. Okay, we're done. Funeral's done. Oh, yeah, let's get back to life, right? I realized that they still need resources for people who are grieving. And I'm like, God, what is going on? And so that's when God told me that I needed to get certified, and an opportunity was present, because that's how God works, for me to get certified as a grief coach. This is actually during COVID, because more and more people were getting, you know, all we could do was virtual. So it was the perfect time to get, you know, my certification. I wanted to do it that way because I wanted to, you know, I just wanted to make sure I did it the right way, right? I'm not knocking what anybody does, but for me, this is what God told me this way to do it, and that's the way I did it. And so, you know, he had already told me that I was already doing that for people, right? I was already speaking to them. I was already pouring into them. I was basically an unofficial grief coach already, but I just got certified. And so I was really grateful for that, because I didn't want to limit myself to what I've always been doing. You know, my clients are my family, and, you know, it's not a formal thing. It's so, you know, empathetic and sympathetic, and they're my family, and whatever they need, I'm there. And so I wanted to make sure I was able to get these credentials and things like that for them. Like for my life insurance, I could sell it, but I don't. I just wanted to stay, you know, active with my continuing education, because I want to make sure I can read their policy. I could tell them what's in the fluff, what's in the, you know, the in-between lines, the small font that you can't really read, or whatever words they're trying to say that may be confusing you. I wanted to make sure I just stayed privy to that and stayed up on that. So, you know, I wanted to have this resource to help people, you know, with their grief, to help them get through. It's a journey, as I say. It's not, some people say it's destination, but I just feel like it's a lifelong journey. Doesn't mean you'll grieve, your grief will be as heavy. No, maybe not, but I don't think it just leaves, right? When we lose people we love, because grief is the natural response to a loss. And so, grief is more internal. When you mourning, that means I can see Jason mourning. I can see Jennifer mourning. The grief is more internal. You may not know. It may just look like I'm just having a great day, but I could be really, really depressed on the inside. That's because I'm not showing it. So that grief is internal versus mourning being out external and other people seeing it. And so I just wanted to make sure that I just had a space for people to, talk about that, because that's the other thing. People, do you know how many times people, if they're speaking to you, having a conversation, or even on social media, and they start tearing up because of a loss of some sort, they're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, why? Cry. Let that thing out. You got to let that thing out, because if you don't deal with grief, it has a way of dealing with you. You try to stay so busy thinking it's going to go away. That's not how it works, because it's going to come out at the most inconvenient time. You could be at the doctor's office, the supermarket, and just see an orange peel, and you will lose it, because you'll just completely fall apart, because you have not allowed yourself to feel what you feel, as I say, while you heal.
Wow. I'll tell you what was big for me, Jennifer, and what you said. The difference between grief and mourning. Mourning you can physically see on the outside externally, but grief is on the inside. So I feel like that's going to help a lot of people understand the difference of what's happening emotionally. Mm-hmm. So that was huge for me. She's coaching me right here on the air. I might not even know that I'm joking. But I guess it'd be interesting, Jennifer. Some people may not even recognize that they are grieving,
Oh my gosh, Jason, that's so true. And I want to let the audience know this too. We do grieve, right, the physical loss of someone no longer being here on earth. But we grieve other things, right? We grieve loss of relationship, loss of business, right? Loss of identity, loss of a job, loss of a pet. Right, so we grieve other things, but because it's not right, as it's not the status quo or the surface, right? Someone physically leaving, we kind of say, it's no big deal. That relationship's over. It's no big deal. I lost that job. I miss my coworkers in happy hour, but it's okay. But it starts to eat at us, right? Because we're like, well, why am I so sad? Nobody died. Right, but a loss occurred, right? So don't dumb that down or think that's less significant, right? Your grief is your grief, right? You have to deal with that thing. You can't just tuck it away, because it's going to manifest in some kind of way. So you need to be okay grieving other things besides a physical death, because those things, grieving the way things used to be, the pandemic. How many people could not see their families during the holidays? You know how hard that was and still is for a lot of families, right? You don't just get over that. That normal, there's no such thing as that anymore. So allow yourself to say, I'm grieving this thing, and that's okay. And I'm going to allow myself to do that. It's healthy. There's nothing wrong with it.
That's good, folks. The grief coach has spoken. So Jennifer, we know that you're multifaceted. You also wrote a book, Here's to Hope, a 30-day devotional to bring hope while healing. Talk to us about this. What should a reader expect when they pick up a copy of this?
Oh, they should expect healing. It does get really heavy, okay, even for me, and I still read it. But I've had readers tell me that, day 15, I had to put it to the side because it got too heavy. In there are some pages for you to reflect. It's kind of like, wait, I need a second. Let me reflect, write out my thoughts, what I'm feeling, because it touches at the heart of the matter, right? And some of it does bring reality, like, oh my gosh. Because even though we know someone's gone, right, sometimes there's something in our mind, something happens where we're like, oh my God, like they're really gone. Like, I can't believe. Usually that's in like the first few years with some people, some people more than that, or some people less than that, first few months or so. And they're like, oh my God, I can't, like my father-in-law, he passed, it was a year in April, and I'm still like, I can't believe it, right? And so when you read Here's to Hope, which is a book dedicated to my 4-year-old niece that I was talking about, Hope, who died in her sleep at 4 years old in 2018, this was an homage. It was, an ode to her. But I knew that, not only did her mother and her family need that hope, right, need that healing, I knew the world, there were so many people in the world that needed it. God told me even writing it, it was devastating. I would just sob, right. I mean, tears uncontrollably. But I knew that people, it's so much more than me. Our businesses are so much more than us, everybody. I want you to know that. Like, what you're doing matters, and it's not about you. It's not about how you feel. You're doing this for the masses that need what you have. And so it was quite the experience to do that, but I knew it had to be done. So that's what got me to keep going, because I knew that if I don't finish this and stay in my own feelings, it's not going to get released and someone won't get help. So the longer I take with this and the longer I procrastinate or I'm in my feelings, the longer it will take for somebody to heal. And so there was birth Here's the Hope, and it you can expect, again, you can expect realness. I took what I felt, what Hope's mother felt, with my clients, what they felt from losing someone. I wanted to be really real, y'all. Like, people are like, yeah, it's the deer panted, so much. Yes, that's true. But I wanted to be so real with this book, with this devotional. Like, I wanted you to relate so well. Like, at this time, I'm not feeling it. I had one of my chapters is this for real? Is this like a dream or what? Pinch me or something like that, because I want to be real with you all and with myself that this is a real thing, and we got to take this day to day. For some people, it's hour to hour. So, just get your pen ready, get your tissue, use caution, and just do it with God. Read it with God. He'll be with you.
Wow. And Jennifer, where can people grab a copy of Here's to Hope?
So you can grab it on my website, or you can IG and Facebook. My name is Jennifer D, as in Denise Black, right? So that's where you can find me with everything, Jennifer D. Black. The website is www.first24.com. So you spell out, you do 1 ST, right, and then the number 24 and loss, LOSS.com. It sounds, confusing. That's why I just guide people to the IG and to the Instagram. But you can also go on Amazon as well and just look up Here's to Hope, Jennifer Black, and it'll come up as well.
Love it, love it. And folks, we'll also have everything Jennifer's talking about in our show notes. So if you're like, oh man, Jennifer, what was that? We could hit the rewind button when you're listening on demand, and we'll have it in the show notes. So don't you worry if you didn't catch that.
Awesome.
So Jennifer, we're halfway through 2022. This year is just speeding by.
Oh my gosh, it was just January, Jason. Oh my gosh, it was just January.
It sure was. And so with this kind of nearing that halfway point, what's next for you in 2022? Any upcoming speaking engagements, local events? What's next for you?
Well, I am going to have a summer event. I don't have a date yet, so you guys just, follow me. I'm going to keep you updated with that. I do have a Facebook group called Live for Today. So if you are someone, it's just a group of about little over 100 of us, intimate small group for people who are having a hard time with grief. Now, I know some people have arrived. They are moving forward with their grief. They're good. But this is for people who are stuck and just want a safe space to be able to talk about grief, do those things. It's called Live for Today, and it's on Facebook. You just have to request to be in there. And again, it's a series. I don't let just anybody in there because it's a safe haven. So that's a support group. But I do have something, but it's not until November. It's called Thanks Grieving. For just to talk about, the holidays. As the holidays come, that's when I have more stuff. But again, I don't have anything. My summer event is not confirmed yet, but I will definitely keep you all updated on my Facebook page. But I do have a family course that I just launched. It's called Family Prep 101. It's a program, course, however you want to say it, for your family. We need to have the discussion with our families, right? To talk about our well wishes, to talk about what we want to happen when we're no longer here, right? I've experienced and seen the repercussions of what being unprepared looks like for families, and I don't want to see it anymore. It's unfortunate, it's heartbreaking, and sad to say at the least. We talked about that earlier. So the thought of, us no longer being here for our family, that's devastating, right? But the reality is that we're all going to transition. We talked about that earlier, Jason, right, from this earth one day. So ensuring our family is taken care of beforehand is one of the best gifts that we can give them. And so this course is 3 modules. I made it about 10 to 12 minutes because I know me, right, and I know people, and I didn't want to overwhelm people. I just wanted to get your mind thinking. All right, how to have the conversation. This is a family event. You can sit down, watch, put some pajamas on, get some popcorn, and you all can watch it together to know the importance of preparation and what to do that, right? To have those conversations because it's much needed. And, everybody needs to be involved in this. Don't try to shun the kids away like, no, this is a family affair. So that's Family Prep 101. And you can get that. That's also on the page. Yeah, that's also on the page, the social media pages, and you can get that information.
Love it. Exciting things coming up for Jennifer Black, folks. Don't miss out. And I believe you mentioned your website earlier, Jennifer, first 24 loss.com, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 1ST, the number 1. The letters ST, the numbers 24, and then loss, LOSS.com.
Excellent. And what about social media? How can people find you?
That's Jennifer D. Black. D is in Denise.
She keeps it simple.
Yes, have to. That's why I got to figure out that website name too, because I know that gets confusing too. So, but the social media that'll guide you to everywhere you need to go in all the products and services. Because I have another book, the Passing On Workbook Guide as well. And then I have a free ebook, Grief Deets, which kind of just talks about, people who are dealing with grief, how to cope, and for people who are supporting people who are dealing with grief.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you. That's all we have time for today on the podcast, but you dropped a lot of gems, and this was a conversation that was so necessary. So I thank you for joining us for this powerful conversation here on the Jericho Force podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. This was such an honor, and I hope, you guys can contact me, and this is a great podcast, and I wish you the best and God's blessings and, just spreading the goodness of what you're doing. It's amazing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, folks, you know how we end things here on the Jericho Force podcast. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. We'll see you next time on the Jericho Force podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Jericho Force podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out jerichoforce.com/podcast for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortify, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.
You're listening to Julius Worldwide Podcast.